My training as an artist was pretty academic sort of training. I went through a time when the art schools in New Zealand really taught you all about technique. They taught you how to model, how to carve, how to draw, how to paint. They didn't really try to teach you how to think. They were all about hand skills, and you really never produced anything that one could say, that's my work. It was all about showing your skills. So a lot of the time it was copying. It was copying the antique, or it was copying a still life that was set up in front of you, or it was copying the figure when you were in the life room. You were looking at something and reproducing it, and learning the skills of hand and eye that do that. Now that was very useful training. I mean, it had some really good qualities about it, but of course it didn't do a lot really in terms of the furtherance of you as a thinking talker in the arts. So when I left art school, I was still working with the figure. I got pretty tied into working with the figure in the sculpture department at Elam, and I wanted to start and talk about things. So I started doing a whole lot of little figurative works which were about acrobats and so on. Because when I left art school, I went to training college, and then I went on to become a school teacher, and I taught in an intermediate school for a while. And of course, my art room opened out onto the playing field, so I would look out on the playing fields and see people doing gymnastics and playing football and so on. So they sort of became my observation thing at that time, and I started making works around that. Some of those ended up being athletes, like this is this is an early wax that was made in the 60s of an athlete, of a jumper jumping over a high jump. And this is made out of wax, and this was a real discovery for me to find wax in those days. And wax is a very old material for modelling. A lot of Michelangelo's sketches were done in wax. And of course the big advantage of it is that it's a material that can be transferred, can be cast into bronze comparatively easily, because if you imagine this encased in a block of plaster with just a hole in the top here and another hole here, say 2 holes running down to it, when you put it in an oven and turn it up that way, the wax is going to melt, and it's going to run out, and it's going to leave a hole inside that big block of plaster. If you turn it up the other way and you pour liquid bronze down, the bronze takes the place of where the wax was, and you end up with a bronze casting. Now it's a little more complicated than that, but that's basically what we call lost wax casting. So that opened up a whole lot of possibilities for me. It was pretty hard going in those days because I didn't know anything about it, and I had about a 30% failure rate. They used to blow up in the workshops, and it was quite exciting. But it's a good material because you can model with it, you can pour it into moulds, you can carve it, you can put it on a shelf and leave it there for 20 years, and as long as the sun doesn't shine on it, it'll still be all right. And it has this very fluid way of working. You can bend it and do things with it. You can add to it and you can subtract to it. Whereas these figures, which are much more recent, totally different work pattern. These are made out of tin virtually, thin metal, little thin sheets of metal which are rolled and folded and soldered and shaped, just like making a cloth doll, only instead of stitching, you're soldering each piece together. And they become, for a figure, they're very light. They're like tin cans. But they have restrictions. And one of the things that's really important about working with any materials is that you recognise that there are things that material can do and things that material can't do, and you look at the things the material can do and exploit them. So this, I can make large things, I can make simple things, and I can make them cheaply, comparatively, and I get some really interesting sort of qualities. I know I can't get the same fluidity of shape that I get in these, but I get a different series of shapes. So I look at those shapes and I exploit those shapes. This is the arm that you have in your collection, and this is the original one, and I made another one for that exhibition that your work came from. And the idea of this work was looking at the potential of Liberty losing her arm and losing her head, and it came about around about the time of 9/11, and I was sort of thinking about the consequences of the loss of liberty, etc. One of the other things about it is that it's reversed, so it isn't the other way around to what it was, reversed left to right, which became a curiously interesting thing. I went through a whole lot of slides one day and noticed that there was something curiously wrong. There were works that I didn't quite have a great deal of familiarity with, and they just looked wrong. They looked slightly off balance or something. And then I realised that they were actually back to front. What I'm trying to do in works is I'm trying to talk about an issue, and I try to set up something which draws attention to that issue without actually shouting it out. Hopefully what I've always tried to do is trick people into a situation where they look at it and they think it's one thing, and then they find that there's something else, there's a little trigger in there which says, hold on a minute, this isn't quite what you thought it was.